a big part of that was the time when Eric Bischoff over here was running WCW in a specifically as competitive as anybody has ever run a company, going right after WWE to the point where you and Vince McMahon are writing TV, competing with what Eric is doing, and Eric is writing TV, competing with what you're doing, and it got to the point where you guys were after each other's throats, right? Or am I overstating?
I was after their audience. I didn't give a damn about their throats, but the audience was really important.
But you didn't. Did you just want the audience, or did you specifically want the audience to the point where like they were going to be out of business?
No, I think that's kind of a false narrative. That kind of exploded out of that era, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that Vince McMahon tried to convince everybody that big bad billionaire Ted was trying to put him out of business. He was trying to make himself the babyface. He was trying to galvanize the loyalty in his brand. He had been around for a long, long time. That really wasn't the case. There was no real, agenda to put anybody out of business, but there was a big agenda in terms of being number one and willing to do whatever it took to become number one.
So that story that's been told of you rallying your troops and saying, we're going to put WWE out of business, or WWF at the time, it's happening, we're putting them out of business. That's not something you did?
I probably did. And I know that sounds like I'm contradicting myself, but there was a lot of things that I did and said back then to rally my troops as well, because you got to remember, from a talent's point of view, it was a very weird situation. I had a roster full of talent that I was asking to do things that they knew was going to probably burn a bridge.
Like what kind of stuff?
Oh, just anything that I could do to embarrass, kind of put down the competition. It was one thing for me to go out and give away finishes, and one thing for me to go out with holding a sign that says Vince McMahon fears ratings. That was me. I had no intention of ever needing to go back or going to WWE. The talent on the other hand,
we didn't have any intention of you coming to WWE either.
Of course not. but the talent knew better. The talent knew that there was only really two places to work. They were either working for me or they were working for WWE, and they didn't want to do a lot of the stuff that I asked them to do that took it to the top.
So you didn't. So that it was more creating this sort of. It was your bravado, kind of trying to be infused into your talent.
It was a couple of things. It was galvanizing the troops, getting everybody to believe in the fact that we could be number one and stay number one. It was probably a little bit of my ego.
Sure.
No doubt about that. I had one. I was still am a very competitive person, so I probably got caught up in a lot of my own BS in that regard. But I can assure you there was no real agenda about putting anybody out of business. I knew even back then, Sam, that the best environment we could be in was a competitive environment. Right. It was like the Coke and Pepsi wars, which is kind of what I modeled, my approach to the business after.